You know something? I love video games. I'm pretty sure all of you watching love video games too, and we all love video games for different reasons. While these vary from person to person, I find that some video games have a certain learning curve to them or require a specific mindset that takes a while to get used to before you start to enjoy them, even if the game ends up being amazing by the end. Heck, some of my favourite games like Monster Hunter, Super Metroid and Majora's Mask, I absolutely hated when I first played them. But then there are those types of games. The games that right from the get-go hit you with their very best and hook you right from the start, constantly keeping you engaged and making a connection with you the very second you press the start button. And today, I'm going to acknowledge the games that stole my heart on the very first date. So join me everyone, as it's time to sit back, relax, and immediately immerse yourself in the experience as I count down my top 12 games I instantly fell in love with. Why top 12? Because when it came to the last two entries, I really didn't want to leave them off this list or simply make them an honourable mention, so top 12 it is. Just to clarify, this is all my opinion and a purely personal list, since these are games that I fell in love with, so if there's a game or games on here you didn't feel the same way about, that's fine, we all have our own preferences. Also, this list is ranked on how quickly I fell in love with these games, not the overall quality of them. And finally, I'm only doing one game per franchise, since I think it's rather pointless and unfair to include multiple entries in a single franchise. And with all that cleared up, I think it's time we get this show on the road, and seeing how much I love video games, I feel the need to embrace the games that knew how to push my buttons.
Ha! Gay!
Oh, shut up! Shantae and the Pirate's Curse. Indie games have certainly hit the big time recently, haven't they? What with the success of Minecraft, Super Meat Boy, Journey, Yooka-Laylee, and that. While debatable as to whether or not Shantae is indie, so to speak, she's certainly one of the bigger ones out there, and with a game like Pirate's Curse, I'm not the least bit surprised. Funny thing is, this is my first and only Shantae game I've played as of now, but to be honest, that's all I really needed, since this game was exactly what I was looking for at the time, and every time I go back to it, it's an experience I'll never get tired of. Shantae was hitting the right notes for me from the beginning. As soon as the game began, Shantae was fast-paced, action-packed, along with being filled with tons of charm, humour and personality, both visually and musically. God, I love that soundtrack. The more and more I played this game, the more it felt like a real Metroidvania, and good God is this game designed and structured so well. Every stage and location is the right size with lots to do, with loads of secrets to discover and collectibles to obtain, along with having memorable set pieces and lots of variety. The power-ups are what sealed the deal for me, as they added so much to the gameplay and opened up so many opportunities for exploration, platforming, combat, puzzle solving and speedrunning. Ah, Shantae, you'd have made Samus proud. Honestly, there is no bullshit to this game, and that's probably why I grew to love it so quickly. It knew exactly what it wanted to be, made the best use out of what it had, and resulted in one of the best indie games I've ever played. Here's hoping the rest of the series is just as promising as this little treasure. Rayman 2: The Great Escape. Good old Rayman, you are my go-to guy whenever I need my platforming fix. But when I wasn't playing these games, that is. Despite playing the original Rayman first and certainly enjoying it, it wasn't a game I instantly fell in love with. Why exactly? Reasons. Rayman 2, however, was a completely different story, since I never got so immersed in the game like the way I did with Rayman 2, and it is one of my fondest gaming memories growing up. And that goes for lots of other people too, so much so that even to this day, Ubisoft are trying to ride off that success, as this game is literally everywhere. Going from a 2D to a 3D platformer allowed for Rayman 2 to be a much bigger and more complex game, and it shows. I remember being blown away by this game the first time seeing it, and I still think it looks good even to this day, not to mention the music is just so beautiful and filled with tons of varied and memorable tracks that are stuck in my head even years later. As far as the gameplay goes, Rayman 2 is a relatively linear 3D platformer with many hidden collectibles in each stage, which at first may not sound like much, but the level design makes it so that each stage is very large and both the scenery and obstacles are constantly changing, always throwing something new at you and making no two levels look the same. I remember having so much fun tackling each stage, as it was all a unique experience and nothing ever overstayed its welcome or felt gimmicky, and some of these stages could get really epic and intense at times. Rayman may not be my number one choice when it comes to platformers, but I can always count on him when I need him the most, and Rayman 2 did not let me down in the slightest. Crash Bandicoot Warped. Crash motherfucking Bandicoot, my childhood in a nutshell. This guy was responsible for the majority of my experiences with gaming growing up, and seeing as Crash 3 was the first game I played in the series, it's no surprise that this is the one I loved the most from the start. Crash Bandicoot Warped blew my mind as a kid, and it opened my eyes to what video games were really about, not to mention being a game I love so much that it is one of the games I've sunk the most hours into in my entire life, and trust me, I don't say that lightly. The moment this game's title screen booted up, I knew I was in for something good, and it turns out good was an understatement. From the very start, the game presented me with levels that were hugely different and offered their own unique styles of gameplay, and each of them was so much fun that I couldn't get enough of it. In fact, Crash 3 is the main reason I love variety so much in video games. After all, it is the spice of life. Being a Crash Bandicoot game, Warped was filled with so much energy and charm, with the over-the-top death animations, hugely varied and beautiful looking locations thanks to the time travel story, kick-ass soundtrack. Crash Bandicoot 3 was a game that wowed me like nothing else at the time. The more I went into this game, the better it got, with the more unique and original levels, some of the best boss fights in the series, power-ups, secret levels, time travels. Good god, this game is just so good, and I am so happy that it was my first taste of the franchise, as this was and will forever remain one of the games that shaped my childhood, and I have no regrets in the slightest. Tomb Raider. If you ever had a PS1, then you knew exactly who Lara Croft or Tomb Raider was for many reasons, two in particular. Truth be told, I didn't play much of the original Tomb Raider games, however the 2013 reboot triggered something in my mind that just made me scream yes, oh my god, yes! This game surpassed all of my expectations and not only got me to go on to play its fantastic sequel, but it was also a game that got me in a necklock from the start and refused to let go of me until the very end, though I wasn't exactly resisting all things considered. Going into this game, I wasn't expecting much. The trailers weren't exactly selling me, and the game looked like it was trying too hard to be gritty and dark. But man, did it shut me the hell up. In Tomb Raider, you really feel the sense of danger and helplessness of being a young and otherwise inexperienced Lara Croft, as the game is designed in a way where stealth is key, death is harsh, and everything is trying to kill you, making it all the more rewarding when you use what little resources you have to overcome these obstacles, making this some of the most rewarding gameplay this side of an old school Castlevania or hack and slash. Speaking of resources, that's the part of the game that made me yell, oh fuck yes, as the game's structure is built around a good amount of backtracking, obtaining new items, and using them to access new areas and upgrades. Yep, just like a Metroid game. I don't know if I would call this a Metroidvania so to speak, but who cares? The entire experience felt like a mix of Metroid and Uncharted, and I loved it so much, not to mention those escape sequences were unbelievable to say the least. I also love what they did to Lara, and how her character evolves during the course of the game, molding her into the badass she will one day become. While I wouldn't say I'm a Tomb Raider fan, I really do love this game, and I'm so glad I did not pass up this one, as it truly was a gem. Super Smash Bros. I think it's safe to say this is the game we all loved when we first played it. I mean, how could you say no to a game where you play as your favorite Nintendo characters and beat the shit out of each other? I spent so many sessions with friends playing this ridiculous and wacky slobber knocker in some of the most fun I've had playing video games growing up. While the sequels are far better and I've invested much more time into them, I cannot forget the amount of love I have for the original Smash Bros. And all the multiplayer mayhem that came with it. We all know the concept of Smash Bros. Take your favorite Nintendo character and use them to smash everyone out the stage. Simple, seamless, and so much fun. I cannot tell you the amount of joy I experienced playing this game with friends, as we would be at each other's throats constantly trying to land that finishing blow, resulting in many matches with sparks flying, bombs exploding, and people getting knocked about like bowling pins every couple of seconds. Good times. Like all great fighting games, Smash Bros was very simple to pick up and play, yet it was completely different as it focused more on knocking people out of the stage rather than draining HP. But that's what made it so much fun. The game encouraged you to go nuts, and oh man did I go nuts. With an all-star cast to choose from and locations everyone was familiar with, Smash Bros never got boring and I would spend hours upon hours playing this game. I'll admit here and now, Smash Bros 64 is the one I've played the least, and I did have more fun with the other games without a doubt, but it was the game to introduce me to the glory that is Smash Bros, and it was the game that sparked the love that I and many others have for the series, and when you take all that into account, there is literally
No contest.
Metroid Prime 3 Corruption. Sweet, more love for Metroid. God, I love this franchise, and I owe a lot of that to Corruption, as it was the game that got me into the series, mostly due to how this game hooked me from the first hour, and I refused to put it down until the adventure was complete. I did not get much sleep that week. Corruption was the Metroid game that showed me just how amazing this franchise was, and opened my eyes to the masterpiece that is the Metroid series. Needless to say, I owe this game much gratitude and appreciation. Before playing this game, my only experience with the series was the original Metroid and Super Metroid, and at the time, those games didn't really do a good job of winning me over. That completely changed with Corruption, as this game began with what is in my opinion, the best opening act of any video game. Seriously, from the title screen all the way to the encounter with Dark Samus is some of the most fun I've ever had in any video game. This one section of the game taught me everything I needed to know, along with weaving in some more traditional Metroid tropes and 2 brilliant boss fights. From that point on, the game had my full attention, and I'm very glad it did, because the rest of the game was just fantastic, being very action-packed compared to most Metroid games, but still leaving enough room for exploration, puzzle solving, as well as tons of varied locations and awesome bosses. All of this backed up by one of the best looking games on the Wii, a pretty good soundtrack all things considered, as well as my favourite control scheme for the Prime series. Seriously, the motion controls for this game are so good. When they're not being used in a gimmicky fashion, that is. Metroid Prime 3 might have been a rather odd place to start with this series, especially when you consider the other options, but this game was exactly what I needed to win me over to the side of Samus Aran, and based on my experience with the series up until that point, the third time was literally the charm. Doom. It really says a lot when something super popular lives up to all the hype. I mean, when your expectations are set so high, it's very difficult to reach those standards that you already have set in your mind. But holy shit did Doom do that and then some, as this game not only surpassed all the hype it was getting, but it is some of the most fun I've had playing a video game ever, and single-handedly became my favourite first-person shooter, and I've played some fucking awesome shooters in my time, believe me. Let me make something perfectly clear for those who haven't played this masterpiece. As soon as you click start, the game does not fuck around. It hits you hard, it is relentless, it is brutal, it will pull no punches and it will not hold back. And it is fucking awesome! Doom feels very much like a classic FPS and is far more action-packed and blood-pumping than most shooters out there, encouraging players to get right in the enemy's faces and force-feed them lead one bullet at a time. Doom is all about action and goddamn does it deliver. I've never had this much fun making mincemeat of all these hellspawns, and no matter how many times I go back to this game, it never gets old. Helped greatly by all the weapons you have access to and that fucking awesome soundtrack. So already that's quite the acclaim this game has earned, but what I love most about this game was the level design. What do I mean by that exactly? Well, you see, you can easily run through Doom in a linear fashion and be no worse for wear. However, the game is filled to the brim with areas to explore and secrets to discover, often rewarding you with new weapons and upgrades to bring forth the pain. And it was during this time that, honest to God, it felt like I was playing Metroid Prime, and it was at this point that I knew that this game is fucking awesome! Fire Emblem: The Sacred Stones. While RPGs are a genre I'm exploring more and more as I get older, growing up I really wasn't into these types of games. I didn't exactly have the greatest attention span when I was young, and I simply couldn't spare the time to get behind an RPG, unless it was Pokemon of course. Fire Emblem Sacred Stones turned all that around, as this game got off to a flying start and was able to hold my attention from beginning to end, and it was the first time I got fully invested into an RPG, as well as my first taste of the Fire Emblem series, and well, you all know how that turned out. Unlike a lot of RPGs I tried playing, Sacred Stones threw me right into the action. Grado was invading, Ephraim was missing, and Seth just got his ass kicked, so already this game isn't holding back, and it pumped me up to see Erica win back her Kingdom of Rhinus. From there, the entire journey just kept pulling me more and more into the experience. To this day, I still think the first third of this game, or 8 chapters if you will, are designed and paced so well that they make for what I consider the best early game Fire Emblem experience out there, though chapter 6 still sucks. And this had a lot to do with why I love Sacred Stones so much. Each chapter was tons of fun, and this portion of the game did a great job of teaching me what I needed to know, never going on for too long or being too taxing. I also grew to really like my small army, as each had their own personalities and uses in battle, and I loved using my wits and tactical thinking to conquer every map. Add to this one of the best looking and sounding games in the Game Boy Advance, and you've got a recipe for one of the best in the series, and a game that started my journey into the world of Fire Emblem. BlazBlue. When it comes to fighting games, I love the ones that are flashy, fast-paced, over-the-top, and easy to pick up and play. Boxes that BlazBlue ticked, and then some. I remember playing this game for the first time at my friend's house, and I was loving it so much that it took me back to the days of playing Soul Calibur and Smash Bros when I was young. In fact, it was so good that I was tempted to get a PlayStation 3 just so I could play this game. Oh yeah, I loved it that much. Thank God I could resort to Steam though. My love for BlazBlue is a case of being in the right place at the right time, as I first played this game when I was really getting into anime, as well as wanting to explore more fighting games, so this baby was right up my alley. The first thing that caught my eye was the visuals. BlazBlue just screams anime in every sense of the word, and this was reflected in the character designs and the way they fight. This game is so flashy with its attacks that even the most basic of moves is like a spectacle, making the more intense moments so much fun to watch and really making you feel the power of pulling off a high-hitting combo, made even better with that stunning sprite work. The game's roster was full of characters that were hugely different from each other, and the best part was that they all played differently as well, and never felt like just slight alterations which most fighting games tend to do. BlazBlue was also very easy to understand and play, feeling a lot like the Capcom vs games and Guilty Gear, which makes sense considering they're from the same developer. When I played this game at my friend's house, that was all we would play the entire time, and I loved this game so much I wanted to get my hands on it any way I could, and once I did and was playing it alone, it was still so much fun and is one of my go-to fighting games for just about any occasion. It's amazing how quickly something can win you over from a single experience, but BlazBlue was one hell of an experience, and it's something I will certainly never forget, especially after playing as my girl, Noelle Vermillion, without a doubt my favourite character in this game. Castlevania Aria of Sorrow. I'm no stranger to the Castlevania series, as my first taste of the franchise was with the classics, and I most certainly enjoyed them, but I wouldn't say I loved them. Due to my love of Metroid, I was very excited to try out the Metroidvania style of Castlevania games, and the first one I had the pleasure of experiencing was Aria of Sorrow. Jesus Christ almighty, did I love this game! It was exactly how I imagined these types of Metroidvania games to be and more, quickly becoming one of my favourite games in the series and on the Game Boy Advance. Holy shit, did I love this game! At first, I wasn't exactly sure how much of Metroid would be present here, considering the types of Castlevania games I was used to, but no more than 5 minutes in, everything just clicked and I knew I was going to love this game. Aria of Sorrow is such a fantastically designed game that does so many things right, I don't know where to begin. I mean, its soundtrack is wonderful and the castle corridor theme never gets old, the sprite work is beautiful, the game's challenge is just right, the castle is so much fun to explore, the story and characters are great, god damn this game is just amazing! The more and more I played this game, the better it got. Each area of the castle was better than the last, and all the different souls and abilities Soma could use helped to spice things up and added to the already huge amounts of fun I was having. At this point I don't know what else there is to say. I loved this game so much I could never get enough of it, as after finishing it, I immediately went on to play as many Metroidvanias as I could, something I do not regret in the slightest. Sonic Adventure. What comes to mind when you think of most people's first experience with the Blue Blur? I imagine most of you would answer the Mega Drive trilogy, and you wouldn't be wrong, they are pretty much the best games in this series and the ones most people grew up playing. I, however, started out with Sonic Adventure on the Dreamcast, and sweet mother of Mary did this game blow my mind when I first played it. Playing Sonic Adventure for the first time was an experience like no other, and while the entire game wasn't exactly stellar, the fun I had playing as Sonic, Tails, Knuckles and Gamma is something I'll never forget and still look forward to going back to this day. Sonic games have a tendency to start strong with great first levels, and well, Sonic Adventure did all that and then some. Playing through Emerald Coast for the first time was a mind-bending experience, moving about at supersonic speeds, bouncing off springs like a maniac, listening to that outstanding soundtrack play as I run for my life from a killer whale. Hot damn did this level leave one hell of an impression on me. After that it just kept getting better, going from Windy Valley to Casinoopolis, Ice Cap, Twinkle Park, Speed Highway and so on. The entire experience of playing Sonic's portion of Sonic Adventure was one of the finest experiences I had in the entire series, and was one of my fondest memories of the summer I spent playing that game. Oddly enough, one aspect of Sonic Adventure I remember enjoying the most was just running around the hub worlds for shits and giggles. I loved messing around with Sonic, Tails and Knuckles, exploring just about every inch of these areas and finding all sorts of secrets and goodies, which is a slightly odd thing to remember so fondly, but it was something I could never seem to forget. Sonic the Hedgehog has a knack for leaving very big first impressions on whoever plays his games, for better or worse. And his first fully 3D adventure left an impression on me that no other game has done to this day. Except for this one. Super Mario 64. This is the one. The one that started it all. The game that spoke to me like no other and resonated with me on a level no other video game has, as Super Mario 64 was the first game I ever played, and from the very second I hit the power button, history was made, and it cemented my love for video games, so I owe a lot to this game, and it has helped shape who and what I am. Oh yeah, and the game is pretty good too. I remember it vividly. It was 1997, I was 4 years old, and I was at my cousin's who had a Nintendo 64 which he let me play. I switched on the console, and I was greeted with that oh so iconic welcoming screen, and then was blown away with seeing this Italian plumber's face on the screen, which I then proceeded to fuck with for the next 10 minutes. Once I actually started playing the game, I was speechless. Just speechless. I cannot describe just how unbelievable it felt playing this game. I remember spending so much time running around the castle courtyard, exploring the depths of Peach's castle and everything in it, trying out level after level until it was time for me to go home. Once we got an N64 of our own and Mario 64 with it, I absolutely worshipped this game, and it rewarded my loyalty by making the entire experience so magical. I loved everything about this game. The imaginative and dreamlike worlds, the blissful music, the challenge of getting all 120 stars, all the different power-ups, the incredibly unique and varied levels, the scary ass shit that scarred me for life, the epic fights with Bowser. This game was just marvelous from the very first second, and is the main reason I love video games so much, which is why it takes the #1 spot as the video game that I instantly fell in love with. This has been Blazing Knight. I wish you all a great night, take care, and while I love video games as a whole, even if certain games take a while for me to get used to them, when a game makes you fall in love with it within the first 5 minutes, that game is truly something special. What did you all think of my choices? And what are some of the games that you instantly fell in love with? Let me know in the comments below. Anyway, thank you all very much for watching. Be sure to give this video a thumbs up and consider subscribing to my channel as well. Don't forget to follow me on Twitter at BlazingKnight and also follow me on Amino as well. Anyway, that's it from me. I'll see you all next time.